There he
My
is.
man, the man, the myth,
Hey,
the legend himself. How are you?
what's up?
Doing good, man.
I've been better. I've been better. I'm like running on fumes right now. Probably got like 3 hours of sleep last night. But other than that, totally fine. I'll try my best to be coherent.
We have faith. You
No,
had a
we
great
appreciate you
conversation
doing
on
that.
the Believe call. You really impressed a lot of people with your takes, and so it's been exciting to just know you were coming on this show to give your takes on ICM and whatnot. But we did have a question before we start this. How are you pronouncing your name? Is it Vibhu? Vibhu?
That's right. Nah, first one, Vibhu, short eye.
Vibhu. All right, got it.
Yeah.
Vibhu. Okay.
Got it. Josh, I remember you wanted to start it off with some specific things, so I'll let you take the floor and kick us off.
Yeah, so kind of the genesis of this conversation was you joining the Belief Spaces, and would love to get your kind of high level reaction to that. But before you do that, your role is product marketing at Solana Foundation, and then you've started Drip House, which most of us remember, and then Solana Spaces. Can you just really quickly talk about that background, just so everyone watching knows?
One sec. My daughter came in.
Yeah, no worries. Hey, dad life, honestly. Gotta
You can
take
relate.
care of dad life. I have 2 kids, so I
It
understand.
is school starts in 2 days, man. Thank God.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I've been an entrepreneur pretty much my entire life. I started building companies when I was like 14 or 15 in the early 2000s, and in my time, I've worked for like some of the legendary companies out there. I was one of the first 20 employees at Roblox back in the day. I worked at Google for some time engineering. I was at Nest. I've raised about $150 million of venture um, directly from my own companies, but I've also been a VC. I was a VC for 4 years. So I've been on the other side of the fence, deploying capital. I personally have invested in maybe 50 different companies. Um, not just mostly not crypto. I mostly don't invest in crypto companies. But the last couple of years, like a bunch of Solana stuff as well, obviously, just haven't
Why
been involved
not?
there.
Why not crypto companies?
Mostly because I was doing investing before I even found the space. So nowadays I pretty much only invest in crypto companies. But but yeah, I mean, like with my role at Solana, I'm not really doing that anymore. I'm not sure if I'm not sure if I'm really allowed to. It's we've got some pretty strict requirements over here. But yeah, last 4 years I've been working in Solana's ecosystem. You mentioned Solana Spaces. That was the first thing I kind of did here. And then did Drip, and we sold Drip to Jupiter. I was at Jupiter running marketing for about 4 or 5 months, and then recently joined Solana Foundation.
And for those that are unaware, can you explain what Drip is and the marketplace you guys kind of create over there?
Yeah, Drip is the top collectibles platform in all of crypto. It's a way for creators to monetize their content. We like, I think right now the popular one is Zora, but Zora is based on coins. Drip is still kind of in the NFT space. I think creators there have minted like something like 300 million collectibles on chain. Through Drip to date have earned, probably $15 million ish or so. Um, and yeah, it's owned by Jupiter now, and still going super strong.
Awesome. And so maybe just to level set this conversation. So the high level meta behind this conversation is you dropped onto the Believe Spaces, and Believe is a fair launch platform that's, instead of focusing on meme coins, it focuses mainly on startups and real businesses. And I think for the trenches standpoint, we've coined, that maybe as internet capital markets in our mind,
Yeah.
which is companies and this convergence of crypto. And I think this has changed a lot due to the administration change in the US, and companies are feeling a little more comfortable with the idea of having tokens involved in their business. But maybe from that standpoint, like, what is your definition or Solana's definition of ICM versus how you think the trenches see it?
Yeah. So the person that coined the term is Akshay BD. He's my boss, and he's the chief marketing officer of Solana Foundation. He coined this last year, I think November-ish. And the original idea was that internet capital markets is the way for anyone with an internet connection to participate in capital markets. Now, if you can go look at his original thread, which is linked to on Solana.com, by the way. If you go to, we just put out a new internet capital markets page last week at Solana.com. If you go to solutions tokenization, you can actually see a link to his tweet. But yeah, basically the idea is like, capital markets are, really like a US bound, US centric concept. Most people in the world don't have access to them. Most companies in the world don't have access to capital markets, and bringing that on chain allows anyone to participate. What are capital markets outside of our space? Usually, capital markets refers to public capital markets. It refers to how public companies access capital to grow. And it isn't, I've had to make this point on Twitter, but like, it isn't like, there isn't like a thing that is capital markets. Like, it's not a specific exchange where that happens. It is more of a concept around like this marketplace that exists where companies that need capital meet entities that provide capital. And I think, what has happened over the last year, and what happens with everything that Solana does, is that it gets co-opted by the community, which is a beautiful thing. I think that's actually quite good. But it also has this downside of kind of like making it difficult for, like, when we talk about something, it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing that it means to somebody else. And this is such a clear example where that's happened, because a lot of our work is like bringing Franklin Templeton and their assets on chain. What the trenches mean is, things like Believe, which in my opinion are more internet capital memes, if you will. They're not quite like, they're not quite capital markets. They could be one day, but that isn't really like exactly, it isn't a perfect analogy anymore. Which is fine. Again, it's totally fine. It's just something to be aware of when you see it, like Solana talk about it, right? They don't
Yeah,
necessarily mean what you think it means.
because
Yeah.
people see like Solana's Twitter account talking about
Yes.
ICM, and then even people at Solana with the dude surfing on the thing, like that was a big moment. Maybe Vibhu, why don't we give you our kind of definition of ICM from the trenches so that we can kind of meet in the middle there and then have a conversation.
Sure.
We want to go through some of your tweets and just kind of talk about this narrative and some of the feedback you have, but maybe Chill and then Dom, do you want to kind of give a little perspective on ICM from our point of view?
Yeah, Chill, you can start it off. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think at first people defined well, let me just say this. I believe ICM hasn't really, at least from the trenches view, my personal opinion is it will evolve over time, just like any other experiment has evolved over time within crypto. We're kind of at the cutting edge of innovation, and what we initially start out with isn't what we always end with. And I guess one question with that thought in mind, I wanted to ask you before I move on was what would it take to get, what Believe is building, kind of the ICM that the trenches view, what would it take to get that to your definition of ICM?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be clear, like the specific in putting the word internet before capital markets is creating something new. Like, it isn't like
Hmm.
a term that pre-existed Akshay's mention of it. So that's why I say, like, I think it's okay for us to add on to the definition, right? And I think the specific thing that
Hmm.
people are adding on is publicizing private markets, which i- in a theoretical world could be considered capital markets. Again, like, it's just the idea of people that have capital getting it to people that need it. So, like, if that's what's happening, um within Believe or wherever, I think that's, I think it's okay for us to think of it that way. Um, but what's more important is that when Solana and when I use the term, and the foundation uses the term, it isn't applying specifically to that idea of private markets becoming public. It's that's you know it kind of includes, it's kind of a catch-all for markets in general kind of moving on chain. Um, but I do wonder if what Believe is doing is like creating markets um, in the way that we're talking. Because, like you said, it's a fair launch platform. It isn't exactly a way for companies to raise capital, and therefore, like I would say, it's in the gray area for sure. Like it's somewhere in between all these things,
Absolutely.
and you know, again, that's okay. It's an early space. We're still like working these things out together.
And Vibhu, what makes you say Believe isn't a means of raising capital for some of these smaller private companies or companies coming on chain?
Because so I mean, that's a good. That's something we should talk about, because the feedback I heard from the Believe space was, oh, Vibhu doesn't understand the platform. It's a fair launch platform. The companies don't own the token, like they don't own a significant part of the token supply. So in that sense, like you can raise capital from it, but uh, is that the specific intent that every company going in has? I don't really know. Maybe you can answer that question for me.
I think Josh would be best to take this, but I will touch on that. I don't think every company has to have the specific intention of releasing a token to raise capital, but it's an option that's, I think, made available now. And Josh, you can kind of touch on that because you had put out a video not too long ago on Twitter just explaining maybe the miscommunication with what Believe actually does for raising capital. Maybe you want to talk about that a bit more since you released that.
Yes, like the background is, I think we got tired of trading meme coins and we wanted to trade something real. And then on another layer to it is that a lot of these really cool startups like Cled AI, which is solving a really interesting problem, would sit in the private markets, and then, non accredited investors would just never have the opportunity. So that's like the, undertones of this. And I think that problem is been pervasive. I mean, for years, like we've talked about, changing accreditation laws, et cetera. And so now we have this launch platform, which it's fair launch in the same way that Pump Fund innovated, a bonding curve, and it kind of starts at 5K market cap and works its way up. And everyone has an opportunity to be there as early as the first capital in. The other nuance to how Believe works, and just as I know you know this now, but everyone else listening, is that all the capital added to the bonding curve, or therefore after purchase, ends up as liquidity in the underlying AMMs or liquidity pools, versus the old ICO model, which is company raises a bunch of capital, they pay out marketing, developers, etc., to go execute on a platform or a product. Where this has evolved and the conversation has come out, and Soju from Meteora actually put out a tweet saying, hey, maybe the on-chain token holders might get, through a foundation, a piece of the equity of the business and potentially even a board seat if they elect someone. And that's kind of where these conversations are kind of coming together, I would say. But I think that's kind of like the background.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm
Can we
talking to
pull that
Soju.
tweet up?
Like, part of what's happening is, Soju and Vesper and folks that are in and around this arena, like we are, um, like I'm really pushing folks to think through how to take it from like more on the meme side, just thinking of it as a spectrum from no value to value, just pushing it further along that curve. And these are great ideas. Like, I think these are the things that make me more excited about the direction. um I still think we are a long ways away from the vision that you laid out, which is allowing non-accredited, or allowing anyone, let's like leave behind the regulatory stuff, like allowing anyone to be able to invest in the things that they love, regardless of whether they're public or private. That's, I think that is a really noble goal, but I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be built, and there's a lot of self-regulation that we need to do as well. to make sure that it doesn't get overrun with scams, because that is the default, basically. The
Yeah.
default is that people are going to, and this isn't like, these things matter, like these details matter, because I think, similar to what happened with NFTs, I think a lot of normal people wrote them off as scams and they never returned back to the primitive. And it's important that our leaders, like, you know, take a stance on these things and try to improve it, and not just don't leave it up to chance. And that's one of those are some of the things I've been really talking a lot about on my Twitter.
So, can I ask real quick before we get into this cool little write up that Soju had? When you think about Solana, is Solana, from what I've been seeing on their Twitter, it kind of seems like they are, I mean, very much so leaning into ICM and democratizing access to private companies or any marketplace, like you mentioned. Would you say Solana sees the future of the Solana chain as the hub for ICM, and they're kind of, I'm not going to say putting memes on the back burner, but kind of directing their focus towards ICM rather than maybe memes or kind of the platform that people think of when they think of Solana currently?
I mean, first of all, Solana is a permissionless network that's owned by many people. So, whatever the foundation's, uh, you know, presence, um, our presence is maybe more suggestive than like actually, we don't have as much agency as people think we do on these kind of things. I would say like we don't like there isn't a lot of value in us um marketing memes, not because we don't think that they're cool or valuable, but because we've already kind of won on that front, and it's and uh I like if you want to build a meme today, like you come to Solana, and that's already happening. So I think the frontier, we're always thinking about, the frontier, like what are the things that where like we can actually contribute to maybe growing a narrative or winning winning something that we're not winning today. And so that in that respect, like internet capital markets um is just an area of growth for us, and we're going to keep pushing on it. Again, it's not like necessarily the same thing you're talking about. Like 90% of the work that's happening at Foundation is on the institutional side, which is unlocking like permanent long-term capital, in the billions of dollars, um, and bringing like RWAs on chain, stocks on chain, things like that, which has gone really, really well. But yeah, this is like I think it's fair to say like we're very interested in what's happening in the space that Believe is operating in, because it's a bridge between those two universes, and we really want to compete for every asset on the planet, from no value to value, or from memes to RWAs. Like we want all those things to exist in a single place. So yes, like this all fits in, but it isn't like I wouldn't say it's our top focus um, yet. Yeah.
Got you. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, so I want to get through these tweets because we're seeing within Believe kind of a spectrum of use cases for these tokens. And so we'll maybe start with the equity use case, which is, what Soju put out here, taking a chunk of equity, 20% in this case. Token holders through a foundation get access to it and then can elect let's say a board member that sits. Just maybe high level thoughts on this Soju tweet specifically, and then we'll go into the other use cases.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great idea. My concern is also that we don't want to lose speed, and I think some of these things are very expensive and kind of difficult to actually set up. But this is where like companies can innovate. Like, one of the coolest things that Stripe did over the last 15 years is something called Atlas, where they made the process of incorporating company super, super cheap and easy to do for anyone over the internet. So, this is what I mean by like, there's a lot of things to build. Like, someone should build a way to launch a foundation through the internet for $500, right? And make all these things much, much simpler and easier. And having folks like Soju, who's one of the smartest people in crypto, proposing these ideas is a blessing. Like and I think the app builders need to take note and go out and like build this stuff, right, and see how it goes. My fear is in general that the that the traders that we have today actually pretend that this is what they want, but actually it's not. Like they really do just want the speculative, more gambling type of elements. And so like we could build all these official, kind of vessels and make it all better, but maybe like the people we have that are actually investing today are not yet fully there yet. So
The
it's
the good
something
old
that
Solana
got to think
Jeets.
about. I mean, it's just it is a fact of Solana that like a huge amount of the capital is like super speculative, and from talking like Vesper and stuff, like a lot of traders won't hold a position for more than like even a few seconds. Like they're clicking in and clicking out, and like, are those the best people to invest in a startup company? Probably not. Like they probably are more trouble than they're worth. So yeah, a lot,
Well,
of things to think about. But I mean, I love this idea.
Vibhu, and is this a Solana trader issue or a crypto trader issue as a whole?
Um, well, I mean, is it an? I don't know if it's an issue. It's just a fact of like of you know building a really performant blockchain. Like it allows people to move money freely, and I think any blockchain that has that attribute probably has that kind of capital in place. Like VC capital is very high quality capital, is very slow. It doesn't move that fast. Like we put we'll put a check into a company and not expect anything for like 7 years. Like what trader do you know
Yeah.
in CT has the patience, has that kind of patience? Like it just doesn't exist yet on chain.
So do you think then there's any chance that retail matures to becoming more of that long-term trader as opposed to just a scalper or swing trader flipper?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think we'll get there. Like, I think when you change the launch mechanism, or the way, the value of the tokens, like we can unlock different types of capital sources. Like what I'd really like to do is, like, it'd be awesome to be able to get to a place where, you know, something like Soju's model comes true, and we have platforms that allow startups to launch this way, and like traditional venture or family offices or HNIs look at this and are like, hey, like this is a really interesting emergent field of investing that I can put my capital to work in, and they figure out how to get funds on chain and participate. Like that's, I mean, we're inevitably heading there, but I hope that happens on Solana, and I hope that happens quickly.
I mean, I remember a time not too long ago when utility tokens tried to launch on Solana, but the meme mania, it was just so pervasive that those those tokens, those projects didn't really last, nothing but a week, if that. But here we have now
Right.
22 million in volume. At one point this was 200 mil in total market cap not too long ago. So I mean, to Dom's point, I do feel like over time we will kind of continue moving in this direction of capital seeking value, and naturally that's where things will flow. In the short term, of course, it's crypto. This is a free market. People will express their financial opinion and in whatever way they see fit, whether speculative or not. um, but I
For
think the
sure.
fact that this is a nine-figure total market cap on Believe, it just shows evidence that, number one, perhaps there is a trader demographic that is worth building for, and then number two,
Yeah.
that we're constantly moving in this direction of, instead of these like kind of quicker flips, can we like focus on kind of long-term
Yeah.
investing, better fundamentals and things of that nature. So definitely, I do believe
Yeah.
it's worth the
The way
time.
I think about it is like actually it just takes one, it just takes one great example for everything to change. Um,
100%.
like 135 million is, honestly, especially if you look at the underlying liquidity. I mean, it's nothing in the scope of like, an average AI startup today might be raising at a valuation of greater than 150 million
Yeah.
for a single company, right? And so yes, it's cool, but it is like, again, the one company, maybe Cluely is that one, right? I saw the Cluely guy interacting. Like maybe, one great entrepreneur who understands tokens and equity, and understands the power of raising from the community, will like put something together that brings new people and new capital on chain that's different. And we need to find we need to find those stories. I don't think we have that yet, but it will come.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we have a
Yeah, go ahead.
couple of examples on this, though. I think it's a little further along than we think. For instance, like Dupe, which is dupe.com. So they're kind of like an Amazon competitor, like help people find like similar type products, but for cheaper. So they've done it where the tokens that they own about 25% of their own supply, and they dividend out the tokens, or they've dividend out those proportionally to their equity holders. So like, what do you think of a model like that where they're using the token itself to do things on the platform to align incentives with their customers and using it for customer acquisition, but then they're also buying back their own token, holding a big stake, and then dividending those out to their equity holders? Like, do you see a world where this model may work, but it's not like a startup raising capital and it's not necessarily equity in their business?
Yeah, I mean,
Like the
I
token
think the
basically
ideal, yeah,
represents all the economics of the company or all the business
sure,
model of the company, but doesn't represent the equity in the company.
yeah, um, yeah. I mean, the ideal vision for me is one where you get the best of both worlds. I think that like just transporting equity on chain isn't that interesting. Um, and I think just having arcade tokens on chain isn't that interesting, but I think both of them together represent something new. But I think it has to be both. Like I think people, uh, I think better capital requires some protections, and that's what equity kind of gives you. That's what securities kind of gives you. Um, like I've think I've used this analogy in the past, but like the most interesting version of Amazon equity is, Amazon stock plus Amazon Prime. Like, I think that's something that tokens can do, that and programmable financial primitives can do, that are like paper based structures can't. And I don't necessarily even expect like the old companies to figure that out. I think it's going to be entrepreneurs that are uh, you know inventing things like what you're showing here, that is clearly the future. But again, we don't like it has to have a tie-in to the underlying value. To your point about like people, just the attention, not going to these kind of the attention kind of finding itself into the more speculative side, even though there's great value in other places. That stuff all works itself out over time, so long as we're being honest about the value. Like otherwise, people will like good capital will suss it out. They're not going to be tricked by these things, and um, yeah, like dude, give me equity. I mean,
So
it's just got to be there.
so let's take Amazon as an example, Vibu, because you just used Amazon, so I want to stick to that. But
Yeah.
do you think the Amazon stock would be more valuable if they had somehow integrated a token and used that for perks and benefits within the app, and then also every transaction resulted in some level of deflationary mechanism like a burn or something, and then also holding those tokens that represented some level of equity? Do you think an ecosystem around Amazon would be more beneficial for the stock, or it seems like you're disagreeing
I think
there?
it depends on growth, because um like you want great companies to have unlimited access to capital to grow, and you don't want them to spend their money on things that aren't growing. Because like there's something like $6 to $10 trillion of cash sitting in corporate treasuries. I think 1 to 2 trillion sitting in corporate and like just sitting in bonds, like long-term capital that can't be used for growth. Like there's tons and tons of companies that don't like there's nothing they could invest in to grow. Like they're in a category that's declining, or um or there could be a range of different situations, which is partly why like this whole DAT thing is happening right now, if you're following along with all the strategies companies. But yeah, like a great company like Amazon, which is still like, well, um, before its peak, yeah, that would be a terrible idea. Like I think it actually would hurt the value of the stock. Um, and this is why I posted about like, if it's about raising capital for entrepreneurs, they need to preserve the capital for growth. Like every dollar needs to go to growth. Is like, as an investor, what you're specifically betting on is that like they can take that capital and return more than investing in the stock market or investing in bonds or whatever. That there's a machine there, and so I like the whole idea of flywheels from an equity perspective is a completely broken thought. But that's something I've been posting about too. But
So what do you
Let,
think differentiates equity from a token flywheel like Hyperliquid, where 100% of token revenue goes back, or 100% of company revenue goes back into the token? Do you think they're one and the same, or do you have any comment on that?
yeah, I mean, Hyperliquid is a protocol. I think if you're competing specifically for liquidity, like we like the fact is that liquidity capital is very fickle on chain, and it responds extremely well to incentives. I mean, if you just look at the launchpad wars of the last well, like even this last couple of weeks, like it's actually unbelievable how fast capital moves from one place to the other, and back. And so, yeah, I think for protocols, it makes a ton more sense. But like most of the companies that are coming through Believe, like most Web2 companies are not structured that way. Like doing so would be monumentally bad. Like you're not competing for capital flows as a startup. Like you're building a product, you're building something that makes people's lives better in some way. I just think it's a different proposition.
and I think I wanna kind of hover over this for a second. I think this is where kind of defining ICM in sort of specific terms is going to be important. It's hard to do that now because I think I mentioned this earlier. It's something that's so cutting edge. It's still evolving. At first, Believe was this place where founders can come and raise capital through trading fees, through these different mechanisms. But now we're seeing more already established companies with large revenue streams that are coming and not raising capital, but almost using this as a driver for their business. So we were pointing out a few examples. One was Viva. They're using their token because access to access to money in that country is the setup is not conducive, or it's not easy for the citizens of that country to access money, or stable money, I should say. Their currency is devaluing at a rapid rate, and so what they're doing is they're using their Viva token to basically say anyone with an internet access and a phone, no matter if you have a bank account or not, you can basically onboard into our ecosystem, and through our token, you can do things like pay your bills. You can get discounts. You can do all these sorts of things. And I know Dom is really deep um, on what's happening within Viva. But this is another example of where the definition of, or I should say, what Believe is doing, what they started out as, has now changed as time goes on. And Pasternak has even said himself that they weren't really prepared for this level of popularity with Believe when they initially launched. And I think even within Pasternak and probably even the core team, I would say their internal vision probably has evolved a little bit, because they see that this as being something, not only just for raising capital, but companies like you mentioned, Vibhu, can deploy these new innovative ways of growing their company, using whether it is the virality of crypto and what happens within our markets, or whether it is leveraging what we can do from the blockchain tech side to benefit their customer base. So I think there's like just a few different things that's going on that kind of give this ICM definition, making it different depending on who you are. Um,
I think what I
and
what
yeah,
I
go ahead.
really need to, yeah, I mean, what I would say is like all of these are really good ideas, but we have to move beyond verbal promises about how these
Hmm.
things work. And that's where equity can be helpful. That's why we use, smart contracts. Like we have to take these and turn them into hard guarantees, and it's very hard, like otherwise, like when the attention migrates elsewhere, the prices go down, the entrepreneurs, the companies, they just stop participating, they leave, and they have no downside to that. And I saw the same exact
Gotcha.
thing happen with celebrity meme coins last year, where it's very easy to make a promise about something. I unfortunately, when drip uh last year when the celeb meme coin season was happening, a lot of them came to Drip, and man, the kinds of promises these folks made about like, oh, you're gonna get like, you can buy tickets to my concerts in my token, and you can get merch and this and that, and like there were so many promises made, but there's actually like no underlying mechanism that tied those promises to in any fixed way, and that making that connection happen is where the value comes. And my fear, I'm not going to mention any specific tokens, but um, I do think that a lot of the promises that you see companies making, in fact, like I would almost argue some kind of law here, which is like the more the bigger the promises are, the less likely they are to be real. And we should just, again, totally fine if you're just trading the narrative and doesn't matter. That's one thing. But you know, that's what makes me think these things, that's what, makes me think these are more internet capital memes in a lot of cases. Um and I
Interesting.
really don't care how much they say. I mean, like you can, there's no if you have like undocs, anonymous, or people, especially living in like places where regulations are, or like, like um I think in Bolivia, like it's an incredibly corrupt government. Like, and when there's like less at stake there, you can say all kinds of crazy things, and uh, until mm, mm, until it doesn't work. And what would be the difference between that and like equity, for example, like the foundation model Soji is proposing, is that if you say something about, if you say like, hey, this is how the token is going to work, and by the way, it's codified in our corporate docs, uh okay, like even if attention shifted away, that still exists there, that bond still exists, and the entrepreneur's on the hook for that. And so attention could shift, and now all of a sudden you have actual value investors who are like, this thing over here, like, looks pretty good, guys. Things are growing. Seems undervalued. I'd love to get involved with that. Um, you're gonna see like the vast majority. I mean, I would place a huge bet on this. I don't know how to do that, but like the vast majority
Poly
of these
market.
will be broken. The vast majority of these promises will be broken. Like probably more than 95% of them over the next year. So
S- So, do
yeah.
you think that there's any future for ICM to exist in a state of as a more speculative asset, where it's like you can make all these promises, or do you think the only future route we have for ICM is like bona fide, equity and like rigid regulations around if you make a promise, you either have to deliver or you are being fraudulent?
Yeah, my view is that in the absence of those promises, you'll have less capital overall, and a smaller pool of investors, and so the capital will just continue to migrate from one thing to the next. Bringing value is going to allow us to tap into more people, more capital, more long-term capital. Um, So it's not like one or the other. I just think is a worthy goal for us to figure out how we can unlock, billions of dollars instead of the probably like 50 million or so that circulates through this stuff today.
So this kind of seems like the crux of the conversation here, which is if you are deploying these token models through Believe, it has to be codified in some sort of corporate document or something that has legal fervor and can be tested in, let's say, a court of law.
Correct.
Or
The
else,
entrepreneur must be held responsible for their
yeah,
practices.
exactly. And or else what we're basically saying is these are fairly experimental, and there are good faith companies like, and I got to give my friends at Paragon a shout out because they really innovated the idea of using the token to buy their own products at a discount, which again is kind of like the other growth mechanisms that we discussed. Now what would, and we discussed Viva and they're a big mobile network operator in Bolivia. So like maybe what would your advice to these companies that are using these token models to kind of like get to the point where you think like, okay, it's not necessarily equity, but it's still part of the business model and there's still value to that, right? Like the value is not zero. So we can't subscribe a zero value to it. But like, what would you say your advice to some of these founders would be, or some of these companies, which some of them are very large?
I don't know if I have. I really, yeah, I don't know if I have advice for them. I mean, I'm mostly am focused on the enabling layer because I think a lot of these folks don't fully understand what they're getting into, and in the absence of that, they will do all the wrong things. So I feel like it's really more on, um, you know, the believes, the bags, the meteoras, the radiums, and so on. Like anyone who's working on this problem uh, to like propose and put into place things that these companies can do better. Um, like the flywheel is such an interesting, like has been such a flashpoint for Believe. And like I understand the premise of it, but um, having Believe work towards, for example, the thing we talked about, like a foundation launcher, open sourcing legal documentation around
Mm.
how to tie tokens and these things together in different ways. Like these are the things that I think will meaning like make a meaningful difference. I think the companies are, they're if they're not crypto natives, they're going to be, they're going to be swimming in the ocean for the most part.
Wow, I really like that. I think that's really really good feedback for just Believe it as they continue to map out their future. Um, One thing I wanted to get your opinion on here because it kind of relates to what we're doing. Let me share my screen on this. What we're seeing is one of the projects, one of the AI projects. They're just doing something interesting, and Dom, you can also speak to this about Cled. But they basically, as you can see here, they're kind of like teasing some things, right? And what we believe, what we believe this will turn into is basically like an on-chain ICO. Set up. Um, he's essentially basically set up a foundation, and we're wondering if this is going to be a similar setup to what Soju was referencing earlier. And I believe this, if I'm not mistaken, is the first ICM project to actually have a
And they
foundation
recently
model.
raised 2 million at a $40 million valuation, by the way, as well.
Yeah, and so they raised from they raised from a few different investors. I believe. Dom, can you help me out with? Was it
Yeah,
K5? I think they were like
K5 was one of
another.
them. There was a big Web3. There's speculation around that, whether it be Alliance or some other big Web3 investor. But what's your question here, Chill? Is it like is there value in Cled somehow IPOing and tying a token to equity and making them one in the same? Is that like what you're kind of getting at, or?
Yeah, because I'm trying to, what I'm really trying to do here is help. not only shed some light for those who trade within this sector or within this narrative, you know, kind of different ways of thinking about it, thinking about this narrative, but I'm also kind of trying to bring light to what can be done on the builder side. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're looking to come in, you're looking to launch a token, let's say on Believe, and you kind of don't know what to do. I think this conversation can be valuable to someone to kind of help them figure out where they should focus their time, attention, and energy. And I think this is kind of a setup that was reminiscent of what Vibhu was talking about earlier, where you're having legal protection, you're getting equity involved, so you can actually get held accountable for different things, and it provides you know protection for investors, but also you know it kind of helps you operate within the legal framework, or at least some legal framework. So just kind of wanted to get your opinion, seeing if a potential foundation involved with this would be something closer to what you're envisioning that would be better for ICM.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the details. Like, I
Mhm.
think one can also create a foundation that has no bearing at all on the equity, right? Like, I mean, I think, uh, yeah, like I get words are very cheap, and we need to see like again when a company goes public. I mean, people, it's something that we talk about as like a bad thing, but they make significant amounts of disclosures. They like, there's like, their balance sheet, their treasury, their income, their gross margins, their debt, is all public, and they're required to report on those things. If they don't report on those things, they can get delisted or fined. I think there's, um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to do, and it's really hard to make a judgment based on any single tweet. Like, you've got to show me the money, show me the details, and
Gotcha.
then we can make a decision on it. Like, yeah, it's just really hard to say based on that.
Yeah, so you're suggesting as long as we can start closing that gap of what's being given from an information standpoint to everybody, we can start to bring private companies on chain, but there needs to be that level of regulation and visibility on what you're doing and insight into your business from a private company standpoint.
I, it's not that it needs regulation. Again, my point is simply that if we don't put in better primitives and better, more transparency and better, links between tokens and other things, we will never find long-term high quality capital in the billions of dollars, or trillions. It just won't. It just will never come. And so it's more of a vision for, uh, how we expand this from 130 million to $1 trillion. Like that path, it absolutely requires much higher quality guarantees. Um,
Yeah.
and it's okay for people to say like that's not important. I that's not my decision. I just like to see the space grow.
Okay, I think we pretty much
Interesting.
covered that area. I want to touch back
Hmm.
on something you mentioned earlier. You said, Solana Foundation was very focused on trying to onboard someone like Franklin Templeton. And that kind of fits this ICM narrative and conversation we're having. What does that look like? Does that mean that the assets under management that Franklin Templeton holds would be brought onto the market and tradable for on-chain participants, or how does that look? Can you kind of fill me in there?
Yeah. So, there are thousands or tens of thousands of different financial products that exist, in the world, right? Like, stocks are maybe the most well-known one, but there's bonds, there's lending, there's money markets, foreign exchange, commodities trading, oil and gas, precious metals, mutual funds, mortgages, mortgage-backed securities. Like, there's a laundry list of things that financial firms have invented, and uh, folks like Franklin Templeton or Van Eck or, BlackRock and so on, like, like they produce these products, and these products are like combinations of, like, an ETF is a great example of a financial product, right? It's not a stock, it's maybe a grouping of a stock or it's a leverage stock or some other instrument, and they wrap it into a public market ready structure, and they put it on the NASDAQ and your stock exchange, wherever. And when you do this, you're allowing people to get access to certain, types of investments, certain risk profiles, um, through their brokerage firm or wherever. And then there's like a whole private side to this. Like there's private credit funds. There's all these things like ETFs, but they're only available to folks that have certain net worth or certain you know, amounts of capital, right? Like there's funds where like you can invest in them, but you need to invest at least $250 million to get access. And these things have like amazing yield, and it's not available to the public. So um, tokenization is the process of like taking one of those financial products that someone has built, and instead of pushing it into a stock market or keeping it as a private fund, um, wrapping it into a token, allowing anyone to have access to that vessel. And yeah, we've like Solana's had like really good success. I think we have 80 RWAs on chain today from some of the biggest names out there. There's still a lot of work to do. I mean, it's not like even scratching the surface of what's possible here. I mean, this is like, in totality, like tens of trillions of dollars that need to be, migrated on chain at some point. But
I have a
yeah.
quick question. How do you feel like Ethereum is doing in this space compared to Solana? And do you see a differing strategy between the two?
Like Ethereum, the base chain, or
Yeah, well, the
the
ecosystem in
L2s?
general, right? Because Ethereum seems in the lead when it comes to institutional capital, building different products. BlackRock has an Ethereum product, on chain like fund or something like that. Like, I don't know, just generally from someone who's working on Solana and then looking at all the things that are being announced on Ethereum, like, how do you feel the two differ, and where do you feel like Solana wins over versus Ethereum?
Yeah, this is an area where Solana is clearly not winning today. Like, we like I think we're probably in the top 5 networks for RWAs. But when you compare it to the progress we've made in other areas, that's not good enough. Like we should be right up there competing. And that's why we spend so much time on this, because it feels like low hanging fruit for us. We have an amazing network. We have tons of distribution. We really do have like the product that can power trillions of dollars. But we're not there yet. So, um, we've got to fix that, and doing that is not easy. It's like there's like I've got literally 100 things on my to-do list that we're working on to improve the narrative, improve the product offering different ways, breaking out our marketing. Like you're going to start to see like the next, I would say, like 4 to 6 quarters for Solana are going to be massive. We are like really putting ourselves to work here to try to figure this out. And yeah, we'll see. The proof will be in the tokens, I guess.
When you see moves from people like Robinhood, seemingly bringing private companies on chain, like giving access to SpaceX and other private companies like that, is there a relationship that Solana's maybe trying to do to bring some of those companies on chain? And how does that excite you for the future? What's to come?
Yeah, that's happening too on Solana. I've seen a bunch of we have oh gosh, what's her name? Republic announced like you can do SpaceX on Solana now. I think Meteora DBC has pre-stocks. Yeah, there's definitely like, I mean, I would say like I feel similarly about some of these things. Like I think people deserve to know the assets that are backing some of these instruments, especially if they're not coming from like non-regulated entities. There's like Super State coming on chain soon. I don't know. We just announced last week that that Exodus wallet, which is a public company, is going to like directly tokenize their stock on chain on Solana.
That's awesome.
Ondo. So there's tons and tons of things happening here to bring public markets on chain and private markets on chain. And yeah, this is the holy grail for us for sure. Like being able to get actual OpenAI, like not just to like wrap their tokens. I think that's the easy thing, and that's what's happening right now. Like the hard thing is getting them to actually do primary issuance on chain. Like imagine OpenAI raising $20 billion like Pump did on
Yeah.
Solana. Like that kind of thing would be a watershed for us, you know.
S-
And yes, like we are working on that kind of stuff.
Well, explain that to me because I definitely am not fully understanding how this works because I see Robinhood do this. How are they able to get these private companies on chain? Are they giving are they wrapping their current purchase equity in it and putting it on chain, or how does that even work
Yeah.
from a standpoint?
I think most of them are basically they're like um, purchasing secondary market shares of various companies, putting them into SPVs, and then tokenizing the SPVs. Um, and so like they're sort of like again like somewhere in between ownership and perps, I would say. Um, but you know, the thing is like it's still like a little bit unclear like what happens if one of these tokenized private companies get sold.
Or there's a
You
stock
know,
split.
yeah, so we can do all that stuff on chain. It's just again, it's like I think we're and this is great. I mean, I love to see this kind of innovation because you see like really early attempts at doing this kind of stuff, and you can see the value of it, but it's still not like fully fleshed out. I think the next like 2 or 3 years is going to be a sprint from a lot of like there's a lot of people thinking about this like a lot like this I think many people think this is like the huge opportunity we have with this
Yeah.
current kind of climate. And a lot like I don't know if you know, like the Figma CEO, Dylan Field, like he like they just went had this banger IPO. You know, he's like a ETH pilled, crypto pilled guy.
We used
Like
to have a
we have
CryptoPunk, one of the
yeah.
alien punks, I think.
Yeah. So like we have like, you know, like there's because crypto is growing, like there are like significant entrepreneurs who like are thinking about this stuff. And the Figma IPO was the first one that ever had a clause in it that allows them to issue primary stock on chain. It was the first time in an IPO prospectus that we've seen that. So again, like we're still, you know, a long ways away from seeing the vision out, but all the signs are there that everything we're dreaming about is going to happen.
And another part of why people are, I think the angst that a lot of people on chain have is like the Figma IPO, they raised at $33 a share. Then Wall Street marked it up, made a ton of money. And then it started trading at 130 in after hours, and now it's 80. And it just feels like retail, even though it's regulated, even though there's disclosures and all this stuff, they still get screwed in the end. And it's kind of like the underlying tones of the market. It's like,
Yes.
you just don't win. Right? Like,
It's actually
and
the opposite of what you said. Actually, those kind of regulations, like they specifically prevent people from like they all. I think they some of them exist basically to prevent like fair markets from existing. To be honest, this is why this work is so important. Like you saw all those screenshots of people posting how they got one share in the Figma IPO. If they're trying to place a big order, like that just should like it's unnatural and it's got to end. Yeah.
There's clearly a lot of interest. So like I think directionally we're headed in the correct direction, but like we all agree on this space is there's so much nuance to it, and we really don't know what's going to end up looking like. But you see these treasury companies, for example, just everyone. It feels like everyone and their mom is starting treasury companies and just loading up on crypto right now from TradFi, and it's just kind of an interesting convergence we're seeing, where it's like, how can we then bring those people that really want to get exposure to crypto just directly on chain? Like, why is there even that middle barrier that they're kind of going through? And so
Well, I mean, I think our view is that like uh, every company is going to have a digital asset strategy, and I think the what's happening right now, where like there's a full takeover of a company that's publicly listed, and their entire treasury gets used to purchase some coin and like that practice is like very much like a short-term trend, but like I do expect like every single public company in the world to have, you know, 5, 10, 15% of their portfolio in Bitcoin and other their treasury in these kind of coins. And it's better than bonds. It's been better than other types of instruments for a long time now. And we're finally people are kind of waking up to it. Yeah, but yeah, so to me it's not a trend. It's like it's the beginning of uh a kind of a correction and how do people do treasury management. Um, so yeah, I think I foresee this happening for quite a bit longer than people think. Yeah.
We'll give our friends at Paragon a shout out. They did a really good job. They have a gaming company, and their tools in the Microsoft, Steam, and Epic Game Store, so it like optimizes their PC. But again, they were really innovative in having a token based model for normal people who never touch crypto to say, hey, I get a 60% discount if I pay in this token. It kind of incentivizes that normal user to kind of do the mental work to like say, all right, I'm going to set up a wallet and kind of figure this out. But yeah, there's a lot of experimentation here that's beyond just like we're tokenizing equity and whatnot. So, but yeah, there you go,
I
Paragon.
think the interesting thing is, so what they did was there's 3x the value if you pay in tokens, right? So if you have $100 in tokens, you get to pay for $300 in services. So from a user base or a customer base standpoint, it's almost like it makes no sense not to pay in tokens. So sometimes, and that's why I say there's all this experimentation going on, just like early days in DeFi when we tried this and that, and we now kind of know what works and we can iterate and innovate as time goes on. I think Paragon is one of those companies that kind of found something that fits. It's very straightforward, it's very clean. But we just have to see kind of where this plays out. But I think they've been in
Well, and
they've
I
been
want to
in
touch on
business
that
like
too
10
a
years.
little bit. We're talking about, maybe somehow adding a tie between the token and equity. And when you see companies like Paragon, who they have this 3x value boost on their token, and they burn all the tokens used to purchase their service, what happens to those burned tokens if we ever do move to a future where every token represents equity in the company to some level? Like, is Paragon going to lose out on all these tokens that they've burned? Or if some company does go that model, what's like the best way to kind of think about the future? And if we do get to that equity point where tokens equal equity, they don't want to lose out on all that value that they've been using to buy back the token. Vibu, do you have anything to kind of say on that? Like, using Paragon as an example, um, do you think it'd be better
Yeah.
for them to just lock the tokens rather than burning them, or like from a forward-looking standpoint?
I mean, I don't think it matters. Like you can cancel shares too. Like I mean, I really, yeah. There's a ton of like legal nuance here, but um, generally speaking, I'm not a huge believer in burning tokens. Like I don't think it really does what people think it does. I worked at Jupiter for some time, and like is a perfect example where like they burned like I think a third. We burned like a 30% of the entire supply, and it did nothing for the token. Um, like the problem that tokens have in general is demand and not supply, and I think that is true for like pretty much all crypto things. Like you can. I mean, so many entrepreneurs have tried to like you know innovate on the supply side. It's just not like regardless of whether it's a million tokens or a billion tokens, the job number one for the founder is to go and find people who want to buy it. And like it's just that's the hard challenge. So I think a lot of companies opt in for the easy one, which is supply control, instead of the hard one, which is the right one, which is like growing demand.
Yeah, I've been keenly interested in like deflationary tokenomics and supply versus demand. Honestly, since I came in crypto, because my first experience with that was, as you might remember, like Ohm forks, Tomb forks, like just Olympus DAO, and like all of that, all of those mechanisms that kind of came out. And I always wondered, wow, if we can just have consistent demand for a token whose supply continues to go down, that would be number one bullish for just trading purposes, but number two, I think the virality of crypto. Like, there's, I saw your post about meme coins. There's a lot of meme coins that I mean, they're now affecting real world change because of how viral they've gone in crypto, and that's been able to seep out into just kind of IRL into the real world. And I think I think the just the virality aspect of it, I think that is a good kind of marketing force that can be used by some of these companies to affect not only growth from growth on their standpoint, but it could also mean growth in terms of community, and they can turn that into momentum for a lot of other things that they can use for growth as well. So I'm really liking what you said about demand, and I think companies that kind of drive their customers to their token for practical purposes is an easy way to fix that problem. Yeah,
I think the answer that we're kind of leaning into is it's going to be different for everyone. Like, it's going to be hard right
yeah,
now to put a box and categorize everyone in that box and say this is how you have to do it to be successful. I don't necessarily think you have to have equity. I don't necessarily think you have to do buybacks and burns. Like, it's going to be different. So, uh, long story short of our whole conversation, I think is we're directionally correct right now, but we don't have the answer as to what the future really looks like. So it's just exciting stuff.
but Vibhu, man, your perspective, your insight, just like kind of picking your brain here for the last nearly hour and a half has been amazing. So we really appreciate your time. I know you're like on a couple hours of sleep, and and you're probably working hard and doing a lot of things in the background. So we really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come up on the show with us and chat with us.
Thank you for having me on. I'm really interested in seeing this category grow, and I love what you guys do, and yeah, keep it up.
Absolutely. And before we close, we just wanted to see if, just from, again, you have so much knowledge and insight just from your background. Any advice that you would have for Believe? I think you've given them a lot of good insights here already. But
Pass the
if there's
neck listens
anything
to
else,
nobody, so I wouldn't I don't know much I can really say, but um, I mean, I will say, like, the thing that I really appreciate about what Believe is doing is that they are doing the hard work of reaching outside of our bubble to engage, um, folks that normally wouldn't take a second look at this category, and that's a beautiful thing. Like, that's something that most launchpads are just simply not doing. I think a lot of them are engaging the same kind of token launching communities and folks. So yeah, and that's really the only way that we're going to find that one banger that we were discussing earlier. Like,
hmm
more shots on goal, more different types of entrepreneurs, and then I think for Ban and team, like, finding ways to make sure that you all are not being taken advantage of, and that's you have a fair look at companies' economics and structures and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, like, everything I think is in exactly where it needs to be right now.
nice, nice,
Has the
appreciate it, man.
Solana team been in any contact with Believe just on, giving them advice on what they should be doing and moves, or not so much?
Um, I mean, I've been in contact with him, but I don't know, like, I don't think yeah, I mean, not more than anyone else. I mean, we're kind of like in contact with everybody in Solana at some level.
Right.
Um, but like, yeah, I mean, it's really up to, I mean, we're not going to do the work, so all we can do is yap. It's,
That's what we do.
yeah. Look
Yeah.
at us. We have the same job. We have the same job. We're just professional yappers, pretty much.
I think that's some great advice, though, Vibu. Thanks so much for coming on this stream. I hope some people got
Thanks
some
for having
value. I
me.
know I did. And just to close it off, I I myself, and I think I can speak for everyone at MCG, and probably even you, Vibhu, are just so excited for the future of ICM and how it kind of plays out over time. So thanks for
Yeah,
coming on.
absolutely.
We appreciate that.
All right. See you guys.
And if there's anyone else, oh, if if
I'm still
there,
here.
well, last thing, if there's just this quick plug, if there's anyone else from the Solana Foundation that would be interested in coming on the show, having that would like to share insights like you did with us today, definitely feel free to send them our way. We'd love to have you back if there's anything else that you'd like to share, anything else that you're excited about with the space. But again, appreciate your time. Don't want to hold you too long, but I did want to make mention of that. We really enjoyed this conversation and would love for it to
Yeah.
happen again if you'd like.
Yeah, let's talk again in a couple months. Let's see where we're at.
Love it.
Sounds good. We'll
All right,
check
guys.
in. Appreciate it.
Peace.